Today's guest is Richard Bird. Richard is the Chief Information Security Officer at Singular AI and what we call a industry veteran, having been doing this for 30 years. So, mate, you've got some really good perspectives on where we're at, where we've been, and kind of where we're going. So I wanted just to start the conversation talking about, with this adoption of AI, there is a bit of a crisis coming, a ticking time bomb, just because of our API security, or should I call the insecurity of all these APIs that are going forward. So let's just start the conversation there. Where do you see some of the fragilities in this ecosystem that we're building out on?
Well, I mean, the fragility is definitely driven by a rush to greatness, right? We're seeing kind of the elimination of common sense, best practices, standards that have been in place for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean we've been following them. That's an entire different conversation. But when we look at, so I like to point towards the Replit incident that happened a couple
that's
of weeks
a great
ago.
example.
Right. And when we look at Replit, I think there's a encapsulation of what's wrong with an entire.
Sorry, Richard, can you just, for the audience, like tee that up for us, like bring us up to speed? What happened? Who is Replit and what happened?
Yeah, so Replit was is a coding agentic AI solution. It has about 30 million customers. Actually, a pretty sizable footprint. And what had happened, one of the users of the solution had discovered that an AI that he was using had gone and basically wiped out all of his code, wiped out all of his data. And when he asked the AI why, the AI gave him a perfectly reasonable explanation that was inconsistent with what he wanted.
Lied about it first as well, right?
Yeah, lied about it first as well. The whole pleasing dilemma, right?
Yep.
And then this individual started reporting it, and Replit aggressively denied it. Said it was absolutely impossible. And then after research, I discovered it was true. And the CEO, I have to give the CEO credit, was very bold and came forward and said, "I own this. We'll take care of this."
Mm-hmm.
And in the AI development community, there was a lot of questioning about the credibility and the veracity of the developers' claims and everything. I didn't really care about that. My interest is how we're actually using things, right? Not how people say they're using them. And so when you listen to the CEO, there were the red flags to me that show a very, very specific example of the consequences of this. The old tech bro go fast, break things, right? The CEO came out and said, "I'd like to assure everyone that we are going to take care of these problems because we've decided that it would be a good thing to separate production, dev, and testing databases."
Huh, what do you know?
Exactly. Now, that is fascinating to me because if you are any number of years in technology or associated with application development, you go, wait, what? Like, what is it, 2007? And yet because it's AI, it's different. Because it's, cloud development, it's different. And in truth, it's not, right? Those best practices and principles that keep those types of things happening that AI agent determined it needed to do are the types of guardrails and protections that work universally regardless of the tech. And we see this, constantly. We're seeing, obviously, one of the most clear examples of the crisis we're paddling our way into over the falls is the continuous exposure amongst these AI companies of private keys.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There have been multiple situations. One in particular, I'm trying to remember which particular AI repository it was associated with, but it basically, one of the big, I think it was XAI, had 100 different models that were completely accessible because those keys had been exposed.
Publicly,
Totally.
Right? And is key management new? Have we forgotten the basics of encryption to the point that we're willing to expose what are, I assume, valuable assets to XAI, right? So it's, there's, the question becomes, will these comedy of errors and self-inflicted wounds continue, right? Or will we begin to see some recognition that the consequences of failing to secure a key where a single bad actor, gets into something, or a horde of AI agents gets into that same exposed key.
Yeah.
Like, are the volumetric differences in bad things enough for us to wake up and move much faster than we're currently moving?
Yeah, and we're going to look at our pain threshold there, right? Do you think there's going to be like a watershed moment, something that feels like it's probably on the horizon where we wake up and go, oh shit, like this is legit?
Yeah, I mean the another breach is, so what I really love is I couldn't talk about any real AI related bad things until the last few months.
Yeah.
And actually it's my own journey into AI, because a lot of people look at me and they go, listen, Graybeard, like, why are you doing AI stuff, right? And I was very fortunate. I began advising a dear friend and colleague, extremely smart guy, who stood up a very early AI company a few years ago, and created my own agents. I learned, all of the, all of the fun things and valuable things that you can do with AI. But as I, was learning how to use it, my security amygdala brain, my reptile brain kicked in and started recognizing the weaknesses in patterns and use cases that, I was just doing myself. But really, if you think about the last 9 months, this is really when AI usage has come into focus.
Yes.
Right. ServiceNow talking about an enormous number of agents in its own solution. Microsoft famously having a solution that the Signal Messenger app discovered had unauthenticated agents running in it. So because we're moving into this usage and consumption phase of AI at scale, commercialized versus science projects, right? We're beginning to see these things manifest into the types of problems that are kind of the bellwether of what that bad event horizon is going to be.
Yeah.
And I love the energy and the enthusiasm and the excitement. I was just having a conversation with another really, really smart cybersecurity personality, and we were looking at each other going, we're having the most substantive security conversations that we've had probably in the last decade.
Yeah.
Probably since even before that, the early days of cloud,
right?
When we were trying to figure out on how in the world are we going to protect somebody else's gear.
Yeah.
Right. And now we're having really interesting, not just substantive conversations, but philosophical debates. One of the ones that, because of my background in identity, that comes up the most frequently is an AI and identity.
Yeah.
Right now, that might sound like kind of a over beers conversation, but if you think about the fact that it doesn't matter what the answer is to that question, it has implications and ramifications for current security architectures, current state solution security stacks. Whatever way that answer comes out, it still means change, right? And it still means the high likelihood of some substantial re-architecture of our thinking, as well as our technologies and how we're protecting and securing things.
Well, Sam Altman came out and said, he's like, all of this, the billions of dollars that we've invested in voice authentication is now obsolete.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I'll give Sam. I'm not a huge fan of all of the. I shouldn't call them PT Barnums, but those people that stand to gain the most economically from a very overhyped AI market. I'm not huge fans of them, but I have to give Sam Altman credit for a very strange reason. Sam has no problem standing up going, I have no idea how we're going to secure this stuff. Like, Sam stood up a couple of weeks ago and said, kids, you should not be using this as a therapist.
Yes.
Your data is not private, and it will not be private until, and again, a reason to extend some respect to Sam, until, as a founder, he says, we really should be doing something about this as a country and a government.
Yeah.
It's not very typical for folks.
And you look at, I think P.T. Barnum's actually a great way of saying it. Like, Dario from Anthropic 18 months ago said there'd be no developers in 12 months, right? And it's like, which companies are hiring the most? And that's one of the funniest things, I think, is like, we're going to get rid of people. Guess which companies are hiring the most? The people who are building these things. Yeah,
well, look, this AI is going to allow us to get rid of people is a misrepresentation. Right, it's a misrepresentation because there is an absolute undeniable fact in this history of civilization that with every technological evolution, there's a redistribution
Correct.
of labor, right? Redistribution of labor can mean a temporal loss of existing positions. But I always tell people, like, tell me the last time you talked to a tape room operator,
Yep.
right? And you cannot make the argument that tape room operators are obsolete without accepting the fact that the capabilities of compute ever since the elimination of tape operators has grown not just exponentially, right, galactically, right? Nobody is sitting in a mainframe computer room with reels spinning anymore, and tape room operators being excused didn't reduce the overall population of technology workers.
Yeah.
It actually increased
in a
because we
different way.
keep mixing up this idea of causal versus correlated, right?
Yeah.
AI isn't going to cause jobs to go away. AI is correlated to new jobs being created or new ways of work being developed. And the real, and I'm going to be very blunt here, every company that comes to the fore and says, well, you know what, we are laying off 1,000 people because of AI is lying.
Yes.
Right? Categorically and supported by evidence lying. Christmas and Gray came out with a study earlier this year and pointed out the fact that the percentage numbers and the raw numbers of layoffs that are currently happening today are almost identical to the layoffs during the mortgage crisis in '07 and '08, when AI functionally did not commercially exist.
Yeah.
So why misrepresent, right? It's not just the AI hype market that is ginning up dollar upon dollar upon dollar. It is valuable for a public company
Yep.
to go to the street and say, we're reducing jobs because of AI, because it suggests that they're reducing their operating expenses.
Yes.
Yes.
And Wall Street laps it up.
Yep. And in an environment where as sales are flat or diminishing, the expectation is you have to reduce your operating expenses. Why?
Yeah.
To keep your profit margins balanced and on the same level. That has nothing to do with AI taking my job. That has to do with disingenuous executives who are trying to make
Motivated by
sure
the
they
stock
maintain
price.
the stock price.
That's
right?
it. And that is the long and the short of it is that is why companies exist, right? Like it's for Wall Street, it's for their investors. It is not to hire people. It is to make money. And it's a great reason to like, and in a way, we used to assume that layoffs meant businesses were not doing well. But now there's a blanket reason for any business. And if you're not doing it as a CEO, you're probably being seen to not be being forward thinking and innovative.
Absolutely.
So a lot of it
Absolutely.
is showmanship.
Well, you have to, but it's funny how many times the historical curve shows that even those decisions are wrong. So a great example, we'll go back to the cloud example. I remember, so folks that know my background know that I worked at JP Morgan Chase, and I will not name the leader that everybody knows who said this. But I was in a room when a fist was pounded on a table and the following expression was used: we will go to the cloud over my dead fucking body. Right? Now, that bank obviously is very much in the cloud today.
I would assume said executive is still alive.
Very much so. And the extension of that is, what was the great dream of the cloud? The great dream of the cloud was outsourcing your infrastructure and reducing both your CapEx and your OpEx expenses. Now, any number of studies will show you that most companies are spending anywhere from 3 to 7 times more.
Yeah.
Not 3 to 7% more, 3 to 7 times more than they would be maintaining their own infrastructure and their own data centers.
And they could have a data center. Most banks could have a data center the size of this room now.
Yeah, exactly. And so now, you know, was everybody wrong? Right? Was everybody lying? Was everybody? No, it's just the way that technology evolutions happen.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And once we reach mass adoption, what does everybody treat the cloud like today? It's a commodity.
Yeah.
Right. It's not. There's nothing special about it. It is something that I have to have. It's something that I use.
It's quite easy.
And so it raises the question, and this came up in a conversation just recently. How long? Not how long. Not. It's not how long until AI does all this magical stuff. It's how long until we start calling AI technology again. Right now,
Right.
we give it its own special label,
Right.
right? But how long until it's just technology?
Yeah.
Do you think that giving it the special label, giving it a magical label, is harming our executives to think clear-eyed about this?
Sure. Like one of the most interesting things that I see is many high-profile companies are rushing out there and creating a chief AI officer.
Right.
Like, why? Like, what does that person do? Like, I'm
They do
sorry.
the AI
And
things.
how
They do AI
and
things.
how do you hire it? Because it's not a exist, right? Just put someone in it.
Exactly. And having been a longtime corporate executive, I wouldn't want that role for one specific reason. Matrix management sucks, right? So if I'm the chief AI officer, am I in charge of internal AI development?
Right.
Probably not.
Probably not. Am I in charge of all the external AI that I'm currently exposed to from both an opportunity and a risk and attack surface standpoint? Absolutely not.
Nope.
Right? Am I in charge of third-party vendor management, who's now having to go through and reevaluate all kinds? So now you're trying to have this big AI label
Right.
again to give out the right appearances corporately, but in truth, you have a role that doesn't can't possibly be functionally successful because all of the accountability for use, consumption, development, control, security, governance, all of that is distributed
Yes.
across the entire organization. It's like giving a chief AI officer title is like calling you the chief officer of water, right? Like good luck with that,
Yeah.
right? So
So let's actually talk about the role of the CISO. Like, what happens as we go through this transformation, this adoption of technology, the AI specifically? What happens to the role of the CISO? Do we get more responsibilities? Do our roles change again? Do we start taking on do we subsume other things like trust and safety or resiliency? What are your thoughts of the future of the CISO?
So my thoughts about the future role of the CISO are tied tightly to the concerns that I have about the current state of the CISO. And as we look at what has happened with the CISO role, certainly product CISOs and solution CISOs outside of the corporate world, a little bit different dynamic for us, right? We're not we're not managing massive landscapes of risk and exposure. We're trying to protect the quality, the fidelity, the security of our products and the customers associated with those products. So I think that CISO discussion is a little different with AI.
Okay, that's fair.
The enterprise CISO space, well, problem number one, that role has become corporatized, right? When I first got into the security trades, you were the bad boys and the bad girls
Yeah.
of the company, right? You were out there protecting things. And now, as two generations have come forward, you have roles and titles and turf and people and budget. Most CISOs still reporting to another C executive,
Yeah.
not a real, not Section 16 officer, but not a member of executive staff, not reporting to a CEO. So every budget cycle looks like, Brad Pitt and Ed Norton in a basement, with a knife fight.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, what I don't get budgeted for still doesn't go away from a risk standpoint.
No.
And then my company does me the courtesy of floating up a risk acceptance, and then we sign away all the possibilities of bad things. Now, all of those mechanics existed in a non-AI world. They exist today in an AI world, and complicating it even more, even some functions like application security have been taken away from CISOs and given to CIOs and heads of application development.
Yeah.
And so the question as it relates to the future of the CISO is will the AI era create the types of consequences that force a company not to reevaluate what the CISO role is, but to recognize the fact that there are many things that need to be associated with, led by, and driven by security that were swept under the carpet, mainly for business needs. Don't put MFA on my customers' access. It will inconvenience them and I will lose revenue, right? And now it's how fast can we put MFA on, because my customer exposures are leading to litigation and it's leading to massive lawsuits. And so I think those same kind of mechanics like litigation that's come about recently, will cause a refocus. I would hope. I'll be very frank about whether CISOs are equipped or not for AI.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is, there's only a small percentage of what we're facing with AI that is different than any other pattern that we've ever seen before. Now, that's not inconsequential, because there's nothing that has come up in technology evolution in the last 30 or 40 years that has even been minutely different.
Yeah.
The pattern repeats itself. The thing that is different, that if a CISO applies good foundational security controls and techniques to the entire estate and lands at AI and applies those same foundational controls to AI, really there's only one consideration that they need to keep in mind about that difference in AI, and that is that AI is not static. AI is dynamic. It will change. It will learn. You can sanction it today, give it an authentication token today. You can know what it's supposed to do today, and tomorrow it could be doing something different. That is something we've never seen before, which means that our data-centric security models, the OSI 7-layer model and DID and zero trust, become problematic because AI is transactional.
Yeah.
Once it's transactional and it changes and it moves and it begins to leverage things like static authorization calls that were assigned to the application and not to the identity, we'll begin to see a number of bad consequences. But the CISO just needs to be mentally prepared to understand that that's what's causing it, that dynamic nature of the AI itself.
So if you were to sit down with a table full of CISOs and be like, all right, here's my takeaway, here's my advice to you, this community of 15 people, like, you're about to go out and do your day job, here's what I'm going to tell you. What are you telling those CISOs?
Exactly what they don't want to hear, which is, and I get this question a lot on an individual basis with CISOs and people in security trades. And I only ask two questions. Number one, how good is your data security today? Number two, how good is your identity security today?
Okay.
Really, if we think about edge-bound technologies and networking, whether it be physical or virtual, there's nothing that those solutions can do other than what they've always been able to do, which is blocking.
Yeah.
Right? Blocking is not security. Blocking is an operational compromise. And any organization that believes that the method to control AI is to block it just simply needs to walk over to their CISO's office and say, cool, we blocked it. We're blocking everything, right? And every CISO worth their salt is going to say, no.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we can't look to, and again, this is a very contentious statement, but we cannot look to the massive big edge players and endpoint players to solve this problem, because AI is contextual. And if there's one thing that we have never really crossed the bridge on, it is being able to apply security controls and governance to context.
Yeah.
Okay.
Contextually aware. When we come back to that question, how good is your data security? How good is your identity security? We're really talking about that fine-grained surface inside the walls, the virtual walls of an organization. And if somebody's going to be intellectually honest to the answer to that, then it better not be any more than we're kind of okay.
They're very messy domains. They're really hard to get your hands around in any systematic approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about the deferred maintenance and the kicking the can down the road that we've done in those spaces, right? One of my favorite examples of this, in my case, having a solution that can do data like protection, DLP-ish. The conversation always starts with, look, if one of your employees takes and puts information into a prompt that is PII or PHI or HIPAA data, we can immediately block that. We'd actually send a message back and let people know that that shouldn't go in there.
Right.
I had a CISO who said, wow, that's fascinating. How do you guys determine whether or not that data is private or not? I kind of sat back in my chair and said, like you do everywhere.
Yeah.
We use the meta tags in your data stores that you did when you did your data classification.
Like,
There you go. You could see the pause.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I said, oh, you didn't finish your data classification work. And the immediate response that I got is a response that every CISO both understands
Yeah.
and has probably used, which is, well, we applied it to all of our data that's associated with critical and high applications.
Mhm.
And you go, oh, cool. How about data classification for your prod environments with prod-like data, or for your testing environments, or that Joe copied off and put into a spreadsheet somewhere, or right? And we have a long history in both technology and in security, and actually never finishing the projects that we start.
Yeah.
And now, if we think about it being a very messy world,
Right.
is it really AI's fault that we didn't finish the job? Regardless of the reasons, and predominantly the reasons are it was good enough,
Yeah.
right? But now we're faced with a technology that doesn't differentiate between good, bad, good enough, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And if there is an open pathway for that AI thing to go get the data that it needs, and it discovers that the data that it needs is in some aged QA or testing DB, it's going to go do it.
Yep.
Right. And like, what are we going to do? Stand there and go, bad AI? You shouldn't have done that. Right. That's not obviously the way that this stuff's going to work.
Actually, you can tie that right back to we started the conversation with the example of Replit, right? It decided for reasons that are still unknown that it was going to take action in a production database. In this particular case, it deleted it. And so now to your point of like, if it needs the data and has the mechanism to, we are building a system which will go find it. We are building a system that will take action on these things.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people want to have that conversation in the context of guardrails, right? You hear guardrails being used exhaustively, right? The problem is that we're not really answering the Skynet question. And I've used this example a few times before. One of the things that I love about this AI era is the pop culture fear.
Yeah.
Like my 79-year-old mother has asked me if she should be afraid of AI. My 79-year-old mother has never asked me what type of encryption I'm using. She hasn't cared at all about my career for years and years and years. And she's asking, should I be concerned about AI, right? And this pop culture, fear driving things like AI is going to take all the jobs, and this leads to the Skynet thing, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I always love to question it. I'm like, which character in Terminator are we talking about here? And they go, well, T-800, Arnold. And I'm like, you've never watched it, right?
Yeah.
Because Arnold's the hero.
Good guy, right?
Right. I said, it's T-1000. It's kill John Connor.
Yeah.
When we think about this in the context of mission-driven programming, it's a very lethal combination, right? People are always bragging about the AI being so great because of this probabilistic capability, right? Except what are we doing? We are giving a deterministic goal to what we are coding in AI, right? Because if we don't, recursive loops will take and burn up, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of tokens on just one request. You have to tell an AI to do something.
Yeah.
That is determinism by definition.
Right.
It will use probability to find the pathways to achieve that. It will find a way to kill John Connor, regardless of whatever is put in its way. So back to the data element piece, what's fascinating is a well-programmed AI agent does not look any different than a bad actor who has gotten inside of your systems.
Yes.
Yeah. And you can't, it will leverage the weaknesses and the exploitable capabilities, most predominantly in authorization, but also in any number of ways that it can reuse, say, stale encryption. An entitlement of privilege has simply been sitting around and not being used because Bob might need it one day. And they're very, very good at being able to leverage everything around it. The old martial arts thing, everything can be a weapon, right? A teacup can be a weapon. that is the way that programming works relative to achieving that goal state.
That's really interesting. Like, we've actually had other guests on the show, and they've been talking about how the difference between an eternal agentic AI and an insider threat is becoming, you can't tell the difference between the two.
Exactly.
Because you have a form of intelligence, which is goal oriented, and it's just going to figure it out.
Yes.
So now it becomes this question of like alignment. Like, how do you get these things focused on that? And that is really, it's impossible to get perfect alignment. And so it gets really hard to get decent alignment.
Right. Well, realistically, what's going to happen, and this kind of fits into that, technology evolutions and the grand dreams of AI as they're being expressed today will not be what it actually looks like in a couple of years, is because that whole, boundary and goals and all of that, what you find is that in order for AI to return value, you actually have to be very specific in the use of it.
Right.
Like it's not like, it's not like AI, go re-engineer my entire company.
Build it.
Right. Yeah. And those are the kind of dreams that are being put out there.
Yes.
Right? Like AI, go
And
ahead.
it sells, right?
Yeah.
It does sell.
Oh, it sells. It's a hell of a sexy message, right? But the truth of it is that it isn't efficient. It isn't. So here's the example I like to use. Google last week announced its new plan for what looks predominantly to be a DevOps-oriented suite of AI capabilities. The price tag on that is $250 a month per person per year, no discount. Now, think about that in relation to the $20 ChatGPT and whatever the ultimate discounted rate is on the enterprise side. We all know economically, and people are talking about this all the time now, that $20 rate is ridiculous, right? Because I burn up way more than that in terms of my usage. So that's not a sustainable model.
No.
Now, at $250 is their cost recovery for Google? Probably not. It's still at a discount. So it raises this question of, all right, well, if I'm going to use agentic code specifically, or agentic coding agencies specifically to reduce my overall headcount of developers, what happens on a non-subsidized basis when the per unit cost of using Google's coding agents actually turns out to be more expensive than Jeff?
It's the cloud
from
argument.
Colgate.
Well, again, and I use you ever seen the movie American Gangster with Denzel Washington,
sure.
where they give out the blue meth, right? And I think this is what is happening right now. We're all getting addicted to this drug for free, and we'll become equivalent to junkies, right? And it's like whatever you charge, and at some point, we're going to end up exactly where we started this conversation, which is we're going to spend more on this than Jeff, right? Because we're going to be 3-7x in the same way that we were looking at the cloud move. So it is right now we're doing it because it's cheap and effective and because Wall Street eats it up. But that cost threshold is going to switch.
Well, and I think it was David Friedman recently published an article about the economic problem that AI has. So it's not just the handing out the blue meth, right? That part is on the consumer side, but on the producer side, what he drew attention to is this problem that you have, the railway industry, right? Railways, were everywhere. Independent private companies, railways in the late 1800s going into, actually mid 1800s going to late 1800s, and they couldn't survive because it didn't matter how many additional ticket buyers they added, their costs did not diminish, right? So the gap between cost to deliver and the gap to and generating revenue was never big enough for them to be able to grow, right? And so how did railways change? Consolidation and takeovers, right? You see the same thing with any number of industries, and when you look at it from a pure technology standpoint, this may be the first time there's ever been a technology like AI that fits in that economic frame, because cloud technologies, you add 50,000 users to a SaaS application, the cost of your delivery only goes up marginally, which is why, software solution companies on the street are judged usually on having margins anywhere between 85 and 115%. They're ridiculous margins, right? If you look at any other industry. but it's why, the cloud and SaaS and all of the things that have come from it have been so successful. There are not the same economies of scale in AI. So if it's not economically sustainable, what does that look like? And there's also another complicator, which is the fact that studies are showing that 85 to 95% of the next 5 years forward data centers that are all GPU AI enabled have already been leased at that 85 or 95% level by AWS, Google, and Microsoft. So all these people that are running around crowing about innovation in AI are also the same people who are going to have to lease all of the underlying infrastructure capabilities.
Or get acquired, right? And we end up with a 3-company problem.
Exactly. We still have the 3. I mean,
and it seems that that's going the way, right? How many companies on the floor today will be a Microsoft or an AWS or a Datadog or a Cisco company next year?
Right. It's just not going to happen, right? And even on that next tier that's there, like nobody, even with the recent announcements and the focus of the platform, the world approach at Palo Alto. What is Palo Alto trying to do? Palo Alto is trying to be a disruptor and a displacer of none other than Microsoft, right?
Right.
And even as big as they are, they're not going to get
Not
there
even
in my
scratching
lifetime,
the surface, for sure.
Right? So we definitely have reached kind of a frozen in amber kind of hierarchy in technology that obviously doesn't create healthy circumstances. But I do want to come back to something. So I love to share names because I'm always like, if I drop a name, it's because it's somebody that people should follow, if they don't already. And my good friend Chase Cunningham and Dr. Zero Trust, Chase and I was moderating a panel that he was on yesterday, and he brought up this this point about how AI is evolving in the United States around a very hyper-competitive, hyper-capitalistic market, being driven by how much money can we make, how many valuations can we increase, is being offset by and by the way, and all of these technology workers that we're laying off is in sharp contrast to what's going on in China right now, which is any human being with spare breath and spare life cycle is being pointed by the Chinese government to learn how to use AI.
Yeah.
And then what are we doing? We're saying we're taking people out of the equation because of AI. It's such a huge gap. And I think that because of this, the nature of this, money by all means approach in the United States, there is a reasonable argument to be made that we're putting ourselves in a very, very precarious footing as it relates to our nation state concerns. Because if we've got millions of folks in China that are exceptionally good at using AI, and we're still having arguments here about whether or not AI augments, people's work and ability or replaces them, we're obviously going to get overrun
100%.
digitally, right? It's just that simple.
And companies are run by the end of the quarter, right? No one is forward thinking. China as an adversary of the US, they've always had that forward thinking mindset, whereas we're just trying to keep the street happy and have a good earnings call in 3 months and everything else. And that's why things the can gets kicked down the road, because we'll deal with it next quarter if we still have jobs.
Right. If we're still here.
Yes.
Right.
It's a really interesting point, because you could layer that onto what Ray Dalio has been talking about as he started to model out the rise and falls of empires.
Yeah.
And like on the fall of an empire, you've got some characteristics. And one of those is you have a lot of internal conflict.
Yeah.
And then if we are in this space where we're displacing a lot of our population and such going to be internal conflict, then there's a rise of another power. You're describing China there.
Yeah.
I could see those two things kind of mapping on each other.
Yeah. And, Ray Dalio's always been interesting to me, right? Because, from the Seeking Alpha days to, all the different things that he's been involved with, he reminds me of only a handful of people who don't rely on how I feel, right? There's a lot of people talking about AI and how they feel. And Ray and others, particularly in financial markets and hedge funds and those types of things, they're always looking at
the patterns.
Yeah, what are we missing? Yeah. Where's the data? What does the evidence say? Why aren't we paying attention to these variables? And I think that suggests that um, we're choosing actually not to have those conversations. Like even this discussion, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to say that in all minutes of all hours of every day, I'm feeling the same way. And many times I find myself like caught up in, oh my gosh, we're
Yeah.
going to be able to do this, right? It's an exciting time, but we can't be led around the nose by this. Here's all the incredible things that AI is going to do, um, without questioning it,
Yeah.
because that will lead to an even worse outcome.
And it does feel like we have blinkers on right now. I do feel like there is. I mean, if I look at the black hat floor right now, it feels like it is a little bit like, hey, look over here. And if you look at if you go back to that table of 15 CISOs, just worry about the fundamentals too, because I think that we're going to get distracted.
Yeah, I think I'm certainly seeing a lot more. This is a very specific metaphor. I'm seeing a lot more what I would call dads questioning who their daughter is dating here.
Yeah.
I'm a father of 4 girls. I can say this. I see a lot of us being, whether it's just coming out of the fog or, there are a lot of folks that have just actually put fingers in ears and said, I'm not going to even get involved in this AI conversation professionally. That is not
That's not a winning
viable,
strategy.
right? Yeah. And all of that is starting to stop.
Yeah.
Those scales are kind of coming off the eyes, and it's leading to what I think I've already mentioned, which is it's leading to some very interesting, valuable conversations that are not academic. They may be philosophical, right? But they're not academic.
Yeah.
We're not, there was a time up until about January of this year that any kind of conversation around AI ethics basically sounded like a classics lecture,
Yeah.
right? And now when you see, there's one particular case, an example where an AI service seemingly self-selected to eliminate any viable candidates
Yep.
that were over 40 years old,
Yep.
right? It's actually led to a class action lawsuit, right? That is not sitting around and talking to Socrates, right?
No.
Like that's
Yes.
that is a bias problem,
Yeah.
and a bias problem by design is an ethics problem,
Yep.
right? And so now we're starting to see these tangible pieces, and I think that's what's waking people up. Now the question is what will that pace of growth and changes of perspective be?
Yeah.
And how fast will that happen? I will say, up until 3 months ago, my conversation specifically about AI security solutions was, "Oh, that's cool. We'll talk to you guys next year."
Yeah.
Right now, just 3 months on, now the conversation is, "Hey, how fast can you come in
Yeah.
and do an assessment?"
Is
So
Is there an opportunity here for security leaders to take on a more meaningful role in this moment of transformation, or are we? Yeah, is there a change here, or a subtle, like where you can see like some percentage of CISOs really lean in and like shape the conversation, or are we all just being pulled by the nose?
no, I think that there's definitely an opportunity. Right? The argument about whether we're all being pulled by the nose is probably a whole different conversation.
Do another podcast on that.
Yeah, it's and who's pulling the ring? But Elon, sorry, was that my outside voice? But there is definitely an opportunity here, and there was already a movement happening within the CISO community, where the years of the Officer of No title were already numbered.
Yeah.
Right, the days for those things were numbered. A lot of CISOs obviously being expected to be more of a business leader versus a technical leader. So that transition was already happening. I think AI has the possibility to accelerate and amplify that,
Right.
because the ability to be able to provide security and control while also enabling innovation
Yeah.
and experimentation, which, to be honest, that is everybody that I talk to. That's what they want. They want an environment. And so when a CIO, and I think there's a kind of a correlated effect that's happening here. I'm talking to CIOs, and for the very first time, I'm hearing CIOs go, I want to go fast. I want to use cool stuff. I want to enable my employees, but I'm really scared about the consequences. Great, right? Because
Finally.
now we've got CIOs that are going, I probably should be a little bit concerned about the risks that I'm exposing
Right.
us to. In the meantime, the CISO has this ability to step in and make the CIO a superhero, right? And say, look, what if I have a means to be able to provide those types of guardrails and controls and security that will keep you out of hot water by using sanction evaluated, AI features.
Or at least be able to
services.
demonstrate that what you're doing was reasonable care and basically industry due diligence. If you can like do that model of reasonable care, then when it goes left on you and the plaintiff's lawyer shows up, you've got a defensible place to be.
Yeah, I don't disagree. This is why I'm excited, right? This is why the graybeard has, huge optimism, because look, is it possible that we'll suboptimize AI like we've suboptimized every other technology in history?
Probably.
Absolutely. And when people question that, I'm like, so what's a bulldozer used for? Right. And they're like, well, construction and roads and everything. And I'm like, you ever see the situation up in Canada where the guy took a bulldozer and armor plated it and took down the entire town? Like, that's a suboptimization of technology, right? We do it all the time.
Yep.
Like a hammer's designed to drive nails. It doesn't make it any less of a murder weapon.
Yep.
Like, so with AI, we look at it and we think about, and we were talking about this a little bit before, like, I am old enough that my very first programs when I came into technology were mainframe migrations. Move 5 mainframes into one new mainframe, right? And I lived through mid-range is going to take out mainframe, and client server is going to take out mid-range and mainframe, and cloud is going to take out this, and this, and then big data is going to solve all of our problems, and then blockchain is going to solve all of our problems. And we do this over and over again. And if anybody's paying attention, like not only does the next technology evolution not eliminate the previous, no tech ever goes away.
Yeah.
Right. Like
I was just talking to a CISO yesterday, and they still have a mainframe that their financial services like runs on, and they're like, "We have Cobalt engineers in house today."
Yeah, it
Proper
just
company.
it's saying that AI will replace everything or replace substantial numbers of things is not true. It doesn't mean we don't have to live through this, the chatter about it for the next year or two, but we will find the appropriate uses and use cases to apply AI technologies like we have with everything else. And it will be very successful and it will do cool things. But to extend it, any kind of consideration beyond that is really creating an opportunity for hucksterism and scamming and misrepresentation. We've already seen ridiculously funded AI companies that have collapsed.
Yep.
Right? Why? Because there was nothing there.
Yeah.
Right? And we're going to see more of that.
For sure.
Right?
So, Richard, as we get ready to wrap here, I just wanted to get your perspective on the security landscape in a couple of years here. Right? Today, it's all about AI. In 2-3 years, is it all about AI security? Like, what happens next?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely going to see that banner change, right? Somebody asked me what I hoped I would see at Black Hat, and I said one passwordless banner. Like,
Right.
Yeah, right. That'd be great. Like, because I was sick of that passwordless banner when it was everywhere before, right? And apologies to my friends in ZT, but the years that it was all zero trust, right? Yeah. I mean, the label of the day will fade. In 2 or 3 years, everybody's booths saying AI security. Yeah, I think that's a really high likelihood. What I would really hope we see, and I do think that there's a tremendous opportunity here. There is no doubt that there are tremendous numbers of redundant processes and needs in security. Right? Anybody who has ever done log grinding knows exactly what I'm talking about. Right? Well, the application of AI to log grinding, the application of AI to, patch evaluation, the application to, there's so many things that the volume of and the existence of noise and signal in terms of false positives and all of those applying the superpower of AI to those problems could have serious positive and exponential effect on reducing risk in the environment, reducing attack surfaces, and not just a environment, the global environment.
Right.
Right. We could see, and this is why I'm truly enthusiastic. We could see all of the hard work that our companies were never willing to hire bodies for.
Right.
We could see all of that hard work that creates way more problems because we don't do anything about it, finally get resolved. And we might see some really incredible things happen in making the digital world safer for everybody else.
That's a really good insight. There's a point where like maybe now the cost to do this work gets lowered. Like the cost to do the work comes to a point where it's acceptable, and then we can go back and do this and we can pay down that tech debt. We can start making these improvements along the way. That's a really good point.
Yeah, and if I can, because the tech debt issue kind of makes me laugh. Like, is the problem tech debt, or is the problem that we never founded foundational? Or funded foundational, right? If you never funded foundational security, your tech debt is a problem. Not because the tech itself is a problem. It's probably fully amortized, depreciated, and nobody would be able to rebuild it for less than several $1 million, and it keeps running, and nobody even has to worry about it. But the fact that you didn't do your foundational controls from a security standpoint is what exposes that technology to all the bad things. So I think that we're going to see a rebalancing, and I want to see better foundational security, because better foundational security is really what's going to change the world, and I think we can use AI to make that happen.
That is an amazing place. Yes, I think. So everyone, like, thank you so much, Richard, for joining us. Richard Bird is the Chief Information Security Officer over at Singular AI. Previously, you were at JP Morgan Chase, Ping Identity, and Traceable. And if I understand correctly, you have just recently launched a podcast, Yippee-Ki-Yay?
Yippee-Ki-AI.
There you go.
Nice.
Yeah, it is. It's about much of what we talked about. Just what does an operationalized AI world look like, and what do we need to be thinking about? So.
Love it.
So I'm looking forward to hearing those conversations, and people can follow that and you on LinkedIn. Again, thank you for making the time, mate.
No, I had a great time.
You're coming on.